In 1994, when I was the national president of the Australian Medical Association, I asked the great Rose Collis, who'd given a lifetime of service to her people in the Yarrabah region, what reconciliation meant to her. And she said, "I don't know, but I know we're on a journey, and I'm living it every day." Today, here at the Australian War Memorial, we take another step in that journey. Minister Ken Wyatt, Minister Ben Wyatt, and all of us who are here, and the stories of these men who are contained in No Less Worthy. The most important year in this country's history is 1788. On the 26th of January, 11 small ships arrived at Sydney Cove. And from that event, and everything that would follow, the origins of the Australia that we are and the people that we have now become. Millennia of rich Aboriginal history, custodianship and culture would be devastated by what would follow. And notwithstanding the instructions of George III to Arthur Phillip that maximum beneficence should be applied to the natives as they were then described, inevitably and tragically, violence would be perpetrated against the first Australians in the process of dispossession by pastoralists, by police, and at times Aboriginal militia. Yet then, only 4 or 5 generations later, these Aboriginal Australians, living in a desperately unequal Australia, then denied their Aboriginality, denied kinship, denied family, to enlist, serve, fight, suffer, and die for the young nation that had taken so much from them. And often they would be enlisting alongside the sons of those who had perpetrated violence against their families. And then those who did survive the war, having found for the very first time in their lives equality in the Australian Imperial Force, would return to a desperately still unequal Australia. A generation after the lives of the men who bring us here today, one man, Charles Mean, who'd been born at Mamiang Island in the Torres Strait, told the Australian Tribune newspaper on the 1st of June 1944 from New Guinea, where he was fighting with the 2nd 33rd Battalion. He said, "I know I am fighting for a new world in which my people will get a better deal. I want to return to an Australia where my people will have equal rights as citizens, to an Australia where Aboriginal children will have the right to education, to work, and a happy, healthy life." That man, that Indigenous Australian, fought in Syria, the Kokoda Trail, at Gona, Shaggy Ridge, Balikpapan, served in the British and Commonwealth occupational forces, was awarded the military medal fighting with 1 RAR in Korea, and then in the Malayan emergency. Over 22 years of his service to this country, not a thing changed. Not a damn thing. The Australian War Memorial was conceived in the bloody fighting of Pozieres in July and August 1916, when Charles Bean, the official First World War correspondent, observed 23,000 Australian casualties, including Aboriginal Australians, over 6 weeks. 6,800 dead, 5 Australian Victoria Crosses. An mortally wounded Australian asked of him, "Will they remember me in Australia?" And from there he conceived and resolved at its end, he'd build this, the Australian War Memorial. This is a unifying institution. In this place, There are no party politics. There is no religion. In death, everyone is equal. No rank, no military honours, and there is no race. But within that framework of equality, a special place is afforded to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Australians. A short distance from the theatre in which we gather is hanging a painting, one of a series that we have been acquiring. This one by Rover Thomas, the Ruby Plains Massacre 1, a depiction of an event in which pastoralists killed several Aboriginal men in the East Kimberley in 1880 who had killed a bullock. And it tells the story of just one of those series of violent events through what Rover called the killing years from 1880 to 1920. The reason the Australian War Memorial proudly acquires and hangs these works is to imbue into our visitors what Graham Davison described as the imaginative capacity to see the world through the eyes of others. For us to see the world through the eyes of these Aboriginal Australians who endured all of that to then serve and, as I said, fight and die for this country, our country, Australia. When visitors step into the Australian War Memorial, the first thing that they will see, right alongside that bullet-ridden Gallipoli landing boat, our most precious artefact, permanently hanging, is the APY Lands artwork, Protecting Country and Culture with Spears. And the reason for doing that is to remind every single one of us on this journey of reconciliation that these Australians have given their all, their lives, for the defence of our common land, our common mother, Australia. And our message as a unifying institution to our nation, to our political leadership, is that within a framework of equality, as we are as Australians, a special place can and should be afforded to these first Australians, in a practical sense and in a spiritual sense. And as I say to visitors, to VVIP visitors, that unknown Australian soldier, who's definitely not a general or an admiral, almost certainly a private, a corporal, a sapper, sergeant, junior officer, could be an Aboriginal Australian, and we revere his idealism and our heroism. And here, as you gather for the launch of No Less Worthy, we all reflect on this journey of reconciliation that we are on, and I particularly thank Ministers Ken and Ben Wyatt and the authors who've documented these stories of these proud Western Australian Aboriginal men for their significant contribution to it. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial.